Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today is my good friend Professor R Vaidyanathan, also fondly called as Professor RV. We're going to be talking about this bias, anti-India bias that is reflected not only in the Western press and media, but also in some of the Western governments' thinking. Why has this been happening? This has been happening for a long time. In the 10 years that Modi has been in power, some things may have changed, or have they? Let's get the latest from Professor RV. Professor RV, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Hey, namaskar. Vanakkam to all the PGurus audience. It's always a pleasure to interact with PGurus audience. And I thank Sree Iyer for providing this opportunity, as well as to Sachin, who is who is everything. He is actually what one may loosely call the bottle washer to the head cook. He is program and technical and assistant and other thing. Very good. And today we will talk about two issues. One is the Western media, why they are, by and large, why they are so much averse to India, or rather not positively inclined towards India. Second is the Western governments. Many of the governments are what we call the Rabdi treatment. Many of you would have seen the Rabdi. Rabdi is this what is called something like our 𝗤𝗧𝙁𝗍𝘗𝘁. The milk is heated and then it is made to be condensed. And then if you see in northern cities like Lucknow or Patna and other places, a huge kadai is kept and it's burning from below. And the man is having a fan in his hand and he is continuously cooling from above. That is what we call the Rabdi treatment. It is done in many organizations also. The head of the organization or general manager or the project manager, he may heat it from below and cool it from above for many of the employees to keep them in track. Anyhow, first is the media. For a long period of time, we were very well known throughout the 50s and 60s. I would rather loosely call it as poverty tourism. There's quite a lot of these international agencies will come to India, the newspaper people, as well as even people like National Geography, Economist and other thing, and write extensively about the suffering and emaciated and and the joke is in those days used to be that that one of the journalist photographer is told by the other, you look at the 11th beggar in that Puri temple queue. He is this 11th beggar on the queue has become very popular because he is one of those really looks begging and very sad and other thing. Otherwise, they say you go to Darbhanga or some Bihar city and then take pictures of the kids, weeping kids and other thing. It can be Somalia, it can be Bihar, it can be anything for them. Actually, photos can be interchanged also. The global audience is not going to be very particular about all these things. And also our films, one should say, but to some extent, filmmakers like 𝗤𝙁𝙁 𝗢𝙁 also, sort of produced movies for this poverty. By and large, we were known for our poverty, emaciated kids, and then snake charmers, of course. That's one of the popular jokes about India. And all this, we were not taken seriously otherwise. And, people used to like colorful saris and other things sometimes. That's all. That is the end of it. So this continued for quite a period. And actually our poverty, there was one Srinivasan who was in the ministry. He was actually the finance secretary and then he became in the Prime Minister's office. He once told that in a meeting in a meeting of a small group of people, that Nehru encouraged many of these, our Indian officials and economists to show larger poverty and larger, even though our growth rate may be say 4.5% in those days, he encouraged people to show it as 4% to get more funds from World Bank and also sympathy and other. It's a very interesting thing actually, because today the government is criticized that you are showing much better than what it is by the opposition. They say that we are not growing at 6.5%, and Raghuram Rajan says we are growing much lesser, but you are trying to boost and show it. Anyhow, times are different. So in those days, it was told that we have to show the bleak picture about ourselves, so that we get more aid and more funds and other. Be that as it may, very interesting thing actually. The media so continued this, and later part of this current century, another development has also taken place. The Arab money and the Chinese money has played a very large role in the media world in the Western countries actually. And there is a lot of reports suggesting that these two are funding, or these two are controlling good amount of interest in the Western media. So that is another type of a thing. So there, first point, for instance, when a media man come to Delhi airport and then from there he comes to India, his first part of contact is India International Center intellectuals or JNU intellectuals, and these people refer them to various other type of left-oriented who present sort of standard, reinforce the standard idea of India which they are coming here with. It's not something newer. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you said, that not only do they know where India International Center is, they also know that India International Center Annex serves better food and better wine. They'll see that also.
That came much later actually. Anyhow, so this is the type of and many of these other senior journalists and others, they would not move out of Delhi. They would come to Delhi, stay in a 5-star hotel and meet all these people, and then they will write. They will write. Actually, in those days, one Kasturi Rangan, he was also a editor of Kanayadi, one Tamil magazine. He was actually working for New York Times. He used to say that they used to send a huge amount of material on a daily basis. It's all supposed to be for the record, or supposed to be kept. And for instance, on Nehru so much, on Indira Gandhi so much. If there is some calamity or if there is some thing, then they will try to pull out from those bulky material something to write obituary or something to write about these things. Otherwise, there was no. I remember in the 70s, I was in Atlanta for a long period of time. The local, of course, Atlanta Law Journal never bothered about India. One or two sentences will come sometime about some floods or drought or something. Otherwise, the Financial Times and other New York Times also, they were not covering India much. The Indian coverage also always used to be associated with some disaster, some earthquake, some of these major. India was associated with calamity, to put it very bluntly, and that used to be highlighted. So that was the. And there are some, media which is Al Jazeera, for instance, very well known. It's known for its anti-India bias. Financial Times, very surprisingly, in the last 5 to 6 years, I have been observing, are consistently against India. More interestingly, they have taken up this Adani case on a very serious footing, and this Hindenburg report, which everybody agrees, including the Hindenburg itself, which has helped the short sellers. Whenever such a report comes, the prices fall and the short sellers acquire it, and then later when the prices move, they dispose it off. So this has become a very standard thing about this. Financial Times is surprisingly, and one has to closely study the holding structure of Financial Times. Who holds how much in Financial Times? And others like New York Times and Washington Post, they are standard in terms of writing against India. There is nothing knew about it or anything. Economist also. Except recently, surprisingly, Economist wrote one or two articles pricing about India's growth and other things. See, what has happened is in the last 4 or 5 years, we have been doing reasonably well. There is a stability, whether one likes it or not, compared to many of the African countries or Latin American countries. Even compared to US, so much amount of chaos, and but there is a stability, and there is also some amount of acceptance of our economic growth. So there is, it's not possible beyond a point to completely hide this. Of course, many of the private companies are enthusiastic. They understand because for them market is much more critical than any of these type of issues. And recently there was an interview by Ian Bremmer in India by Indian. Incidentally, Indian television always interviews the white man as an expert and other thing. I went to come across one American television interviewing a Indian, not America, one who is settled there, like your 𝗤𝙗 𝗤𝘂𝘁𝑍𝑐𝑎𝑟𝑖 or something. I'm talking about from India. Anybody is called, and then Russian television does it sometime from India. Sometime they ask the Indian view, and maybe good view or bad view, that doesn't matter. But we are very enthusiastic. I have seen, let me be very blunt, very senior ministers literally providing opportunity when somebody mentions BBC or New York Times have come. They get crushed in the sense, so many of us are waiting to see the concerned person, but the queue is jumped. It's like Tirupati, this entry where suddenly some VIP come, he breaks the queue and then he goes directly to Lord Venkateshwara to pray. And one of my friends told that is important because they have done so much sin. It is very important they get first preference to go and pray. Anyhow, I have seen senior ministers providing this. I don't know, now it might have got reduced or anything. There is a clamor in the sense when a name BBC is mentioned or when the name New York Times is mentioned, automatically, they sit erect and finally those people, very sarcastically they write something. One report I remember, a cobweb in the finance minister's room was also mentioned. Cobweb it might be possible in any of the places, could be, but that was highlighted. It's a very silly type of reporting by some of these major international newspapers and other things. So that's also our fault. Themselves, we eagerly wait for the. So the situation may not change as long as the shareholding pattern of these media is critically studied. Who is controlling it? Finally, ultimately, the owners are the ones who may give some clues. They may not dictate every one sentence or equally. For instance, a simple example is in India is NDTV was originally owned by Pranay Roy and his wife and Mary. Later on, it has been acquired by Adani. Now you can see the change in the type of coverage, interviewing with the Prime Minister, interviewing with the Home Minister, and all that. This is a very. So ultimately, it is the owner who gives clues. He may not, as I mentioned, he may not dictate, this is the only thing you should do or any of those things. So it's very important. And we also should cultivate the habit of, very important, I repeat it, ignoring some of these fellows. We give too much importance. If New York Times say that, Indian elections are rigged, immediately we put it as headlines and make a very big, as if they know much more about us than ourselves. This is something which we should overcome. And similarly, I would say, like credit rating institution, university ranking, hunger index, and the other one is most joking is the happiness index. Happiness index, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Palestine comes above India. Can you beat that? If you want. I can never imagine a country involved in continuous war in the last 1 year like Palestine will be more happy than a country like India. Anyhow, and plus the religious reports very often coming from US. One agency is there which every annual ritual it releases a report, and it always
Professor RV,
CRFR, right? And that committee, incidentally, doesn't have any Hindus. A committee has got people belonging to other faiths and other. So that goes on, and that will change once the attitude of the government. One important thing people don't realize is whatever said and done, except for extreme situation like this Watergate, by and large, the Western media is following the Western government. It's very important. What is this?
Sir, your video is not very smooth. Do you mind logging out and logging back in, sir?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And while he is doing that, viewers, I wanted to share a personal incident. Like Professor says, the CAA bill, Citizenship Amendment Act bill, was enacted and passed on 11th of December 2019. Guess when the Shaheen Baug protest started? 4 days later, or 1 week, maximum December 19th, 2019. And I happened to be in India around the 25th, and I was there in Delhi for a few days. And I usually go and stay at a particular hotel. Name is not important, but it's known that that hotel is where most of the journalists and other people stay. Already by that time, there was a posse of newspapers, everybody having these professional photographers and things like that. And I used to think, what exactly is happening in India? I don't see anything, because by the 25th of December, Shaheen Baug protests had not taken over and obstructed the expressway yet. But the foreign media already knew. So all this tells you, at that time we were all naive. We did not know that there could be something called as a toolkit. But toolkit was in play. I am personally witness to that. Sir, back to you, sir. I was just talking about what happened in December 2019.
And as you rightly said, there is also another issue. Many a time you find these writers, particularly, as well as the Bloomberg, they getting scoop from the government. I think senior government officials are enamored by these agencies, and then they give some information about the impending type of changes in the legislation, or thinking about the changes in all these things. So they get the scoop and they immediately write. And other thing is government. Now government, as I mentioned, is this Rabdi treatment. They are not uniformly against India or anything. Now India, whether one likes it or not, is 5th position as far as the GDP is concerned on nominal terms. And on purchasing power parity term, we are on the 3rd position. Let's be very clear. Of course, some critic will immediately jump and say that don't go by the GDP, go by the per capita GDP. Given our population, our per capita will be relatively very small. But in the case of China, they won't argue like that. They will say for China, you take the total GDP. Anyhow, we are recognized, or rather accepted, as one of the major powers in terms of the aggregate GDP. That is what provides us a lot of cushion today. So we are not in the main dining table. Let's be very clear about it. Main dining table, these G7 people are sitting. Even during Manmohan Singh time, one small stool is provided in the corner of the room, and we are asked to sit there. And so we can sit in that stool and then enjoy the meal, whatever is provided in the plate in our hand. But we are not in the main dining table. That's very, very critical. And the main dining table people are also the ones who are in United Nations Security Council and all these things, blah, blah, NATO and various other things. Now the question is, they are not going to invite us to come and sit. Let's be very clear and blunt about it. Nobody is going to give their main, dining table to you. We have to get it. We have to, grab it in the sense. To that extent, we have to become much, much more what one can call self-confident and assertive. For instance, let me give another illustrator. US, everybody knows, bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Actually, that was after the war was, in a technical sense, over. Japan has surrendered, but that's immaterial. And US waged war with Vietnam for such a long period of time. So many of the US citizens died, as well as the Vietnamese. Now both Japan and Vietnam are in the good books of US. Japan, of course, has a poodle in the sense of being its own subsidiary type of thing. And Vietnam is also very much appreciated by US. US is what one may loosely call absorbed both of these powers into that, but not a country like India. That's very interesting, because India is not one of those which will nod its head, particularly in the last 10 years, one can say. And before that, we were having our own type of a holier than thou attitude. We used to have views on everything. We used to have view on the Somalia's hunger. We used to have view on the Chad revolution, everything. We will have our own say, and then we will make a statement also. Totally unrelated, uncalled for. Anyhow, that was a period where what we may loosely call the Nehruvian dream era. And after that, Indira Gandhi time. And then now, last couple of years at least, we are having our own relatively stronger external affairs minister who cannot be easily bullied, another thing, who cannot be easily arm twisted, another thing. So that is something which irritates the Western powers. And there was a light-hearted but a very important thing. In one of the interviews in Europe, our external affairs minister was asked, which side you are in, type of thing, like, and he replied that I am on all sides. India side, I am on. Why? And he also asked that lady who asked him this question, why are you so much jealous if I am friendly with more than one power? He said, and recently, actually, Modi also mentioned about it. Normally, people visit Israel and Palestine and come back. That's a standard type of a thing. Like, in India, the political leaders will go to a temple and immediately go to a mosque also. And then, but he said he will not do it. He went to Palestine on his own. That's all. He didn't combine it with Israel. But surprisingly, he told the Israeli airplanes actually protected his plane. They followed it and saw to it that it reached Palestine in time. What I want to say is combining, and then this that is slowly gone. Now it's a question of we deciding about our own. So the Western countries are doing that Rabdi treatment, as I told you. They will heat it from below. They will, suddenly the one statement will be made that India is not an easy country and the minorities are being ill-treated there and other. And then later the ambassador of that country will appreciate India for its plurality, and both ways it will be. So the White House many a time will be pro-India, particularly if there is a Republican White House. It's very important. Except for the Nixon period, all Republican White House was, while the Democrat White House is slightly cranky. The Democrat, they have their own internal liberal and this various other policies. So they have the holier than thou art. So that type of an attitude, they would like to, what one can call redefine India. They would like to change, help India becoming more secular, more what one can call understanding and other things. So the Democrats have their own notion of helping India in terms of changing. The Republicans, I don't think they care about whether, except for the religious group, the evangelical group in the Republican, who are not very enthusiastic about the India treating it tribals and other things, according to them. Otherwise, the overall Republicans are, they don't care. As long as the business is going to be done with India, they are quite okay about it. Big companies are getting investment in India, and they are not about like a Democrat trying to have this holier than thou attitude. This is so the White House, the foggy bottom, as it is known as, the otherwise the State Department, that is typically contains a lot of people who are not inclined towards India. Very important. They periodically come out, and very interestingly, here should bear me out, large number of Indians are in various positions. Not significant, but for instance, Vice President of US, senators, and then that what do you call that Vedanti or Patel, who comes as a spokesperson.
Vedant Patel, Department of State.
There is also, various, but I don't think they seem to be having any significant amount of Indian influence inside the ruling groups. Same thing I would say about Britain also. A lot of Indians are in very good position, but they are not in any sense compared to Jews. Anyhow, the foggy bottom or the State Department contain, and Pentagon, you don't have to even mention. Pentagon is so much pro-Pakistan thing. Over a long period of time, they have been supplying arms and ammunition and other things. I'm talking about from 50s, Cento time. And many of the generals in Pentagon have fattened themselves in terms of cut money and other things. Pakistan is very well known for that. And thousands of bofors have taken place, but unlike India, there it is totally different. So the Pentagon, incidentally, in studies have suggested in US today, in Washington area, there are more star generals than put together in the Second World War together, fully. So that is the type of movement of these generals there. And all of them are beholden to Pakistanis. They all love Pakistan actually for various reasons. So they can continue to supply arms and ammunition to Pakistan. That's the thing. So the position is White House, if it is red, that is if it is Republican, except Nixon period, let's be very clear about it. All other times it is very much favorable to Indian. That's why Ian Bremmer recently told if Trump comes back, it's not going to be advantageous India. I think Bremmer doesn't know anything about India nor about Trump. And, I would rather rate between Trump and Biden. Trump is definitely more inclined towards India and leave it at that. So that is so the governments in Europe, of course, Macron and this German leaders and other things, same thing. At one point of time, they will suddenly go against India without knowing anything. Like Biden, without knowing anything, is told he clubbed India as xenophobic. Unbelievable, actually. We were one of the oldest civilization giving refugees coming from Persia, from in those days what was known as the Iran, Parsis and other. Much before that, even Jews have come to India, and the Jews themselves accepted India is the only country where they have not been humiliated or harassed or. So xenophobic is something unbelievable actually. I think he has never visited India. First of all, the 28 states and multiplicity, 23 languages, bigger languages, and so many different cultures and so many. I think best is we should bring him if he loses the poll, he will have more time to come. We should bring him and take him to every state and show him what is the type of a mix we have got, another thing. Anyhow, so many a time they make observations or comments without having any deep knowledge or anything. And then to compensate that, our ambassador here, the US ambassador here, went on and on about how India is a great country, how India is self-dependent, all this, blah, blah, blah. Europeans, on the other hand, even Britishers, sometimes one is surprised actually. They still think that India is a colony of Britain. That's one problem. The France thinks that Mali and many of the African countries are still the colony of France. It doesn't recognize that long time before they have become separate and independent. Same way, Britain also many a time think that Britain is not able to understand how India is grown in the last 70 years, independent of what Britain is doing. The other European countries have mixed. Only thing is Holland. Holland has got now this new leader who is very favorably disposed to, believe me, to this Sharma.
Nupur Sharma.
Doghouse, in the sense, after making observation and comments about the Islamic religion in a TV, she didn't say anything particularly wrong or anything, but somehow it is not taken well, and she is asked to sit out by the party as well as by various agencies, and she has not come after that in any. But the Holland Prime Minister, of all the person, has been very enthusiastic about her, and he even has talked to her. He says he is very, this Holland person has given an interview, another thing. He has been extremely opposed to Islam and Islamic religion and their migration into Holland, and it's a very long story. Anyhow, other than that particular country, and he has openly told he appreciates Hindus and he is very fond of them and other. I don't think any other, but we have to wait and see, because the 5th and 6th election of European Parliament would completely alter the situation. If large number of rightist political leaders win the election, then the whole complexion of Europe itself will be different. Otherwise, their understanding of India is again, from poverty tourism. Now it is more like talking about yoga and various other type of thing. But slowly they are recognizing, particularly after our success in satellite era, and even that they were ridiculing. I remember in the 80s, I was in US. The Japanese were planning to import their cars into US. Believe me, New York Times or Wall Street Journal, one of them published a cartoon that small, these metallic cars which children use on the surface of the floor to push. Those metallic cars will only be given by Japan. And they were derisive, and they didn't realize that Japan has come of age. And both in Europe as well as in US, the Japanese cars were doing very well. They were small cars. And till then, US only produced huge cars. US wanted to have the cars as an alternative to the house. That type of a bigger and bigger car, But Japan made a very small cars. And most of the families initially in the 80s, since I was there that time, they bought it as a second, as an alternative for local travel, purchase, and not for long distance or anything. But these cars were very, very efficient, fuel efficient, as well as, absolutely no need to take them to the mechanic at all. That's what my American colleague used to say. And so it became a very popular thing, and these small cars. And by then the OPEC and other crises of 70s, many of you will remember, oil crisis, and prices began to shoot. 99 pence used to be the per what is known as gallon. and that's a dream anymore. Actually, that time itself it began to go by 1.2, 1.3 and other. So people shifted to small cars. So both the European tried all stupid things, like France told the cars can be imported only through Marseille port, not by other port, and it should have all literature in French, not in Japanese. All this type of what are known as the extra what one can call tax restrictions were tried, but didn't work. People, once the product is good and people want to buy it, you cannot. And that gave rise to the study by Angus Madison of this Japan. Openly, many told they thought Japanese were all in the mountains and generally, inhaling and exhaling and praying to Buddha. And how come they are like that time in the 70s? I used to be asked, is it really true that people are sitting on top of trees and other thing in India? People are living on top of trees. I told yes, many of them, but they are all trying to come down now using computer programming. They have all got a laptop and then trying to come down from the top of trees. I used to joke with them. So like that, Angus Madison found out after his exhaustive study, OECD as well as Oxford University sponsored him. He found out that every century from 0 AD, India and China were the largest GDP in the world. More than 50% GDP in the world were India and China. Much later, Japan also joined in that. Till 1800. After that, the colonialism came, industrial revolution and various other. Now it is suggested by many, by another 2040 or something, India may be having some 25 to 30% of the global GDP. Already India and China is having something like 22% of the global GDP. So this is something. That's why Angus Madison told India and China are not emerging market. They are re-emerging markets. Kindly note it, or particularly those who are watching my programs and other things, don't use the word emerging market anymore. Call them as all these countries as re-emerging market. That is very, very critical. Same way, people who are thinking that India is only known for all these things, suddenly they read in the paper or find out that we are sending satellites, and also with collaboration with the NASA and with the European agencies and other things. And we are, our rockets landed on the moon and various. So they were not, actually there was a cartoon, some of you may remember in New York Times, that this man coming with a cow and also with a bucket in his hand, he is peeping and then telling that we will send the rockets. It was a very ridiculous type of attempt at minimizing our. But slowly, many of the large companies are also realizing. And of course, the role of the Indian engineers in US and other companies like your Sundar Pichai and Nadella and other things is also making, as the current thinking is AI is all India only. It's not artificial intelligence, it's all Indians. So this is changing, but it will take a lot of time. For instance, one example I will tell, credit rating agencies are still not making India above B. They are only showing B, sometime B plus, positive, and whereas in the worst crisis of 2008, Ireland was never shown below. It was in such a bad shape actually. What were known as pigs, Portugal, Ireland, and then
Greece and Spain.
Greece and Spain.
Yeah.
They were never brought to sea or anything. Much later, after some 1.5 years only, their ratings were brought down. So India is relatively stable. There is no major crisis or anything. Our inflation is under control, and our forex is more than $500 billion. So why no rating agency because it is their standard type of attitude towards India. Vanguard, one of the major investment company in the 80s, I visited there as a Fulbright scholar. That time actually, no, unfortunately, he is no more. The CRISIL head, Ravi Mohan, he wanted me to study the credit rating of all these agencies and how it is facilitating the whole process. That was one of the item. And so I visited many of them, actually, credit rating agencies also, Fitch, S&P, Moody's and other. But in the process, I also visited some of the investment, very big companies. You believe me, sir, many of them were not even aware that we have a chartered accounting institute. We have chartered accountant produced as per thing, and they are recognized in UK and other things. I am talking about the late early 80s. Many of them were surprised to hear from me that there is a CA. I told not only CA, there is also a cost. In those days, it was known as the Cost Institute, company secretary, and then our judicial system. Finally, it ended up. I went to study them. They began to ask me more questions, and then I have to, go on respond. No, what I want to say is we were not in the. Not I won't blame them. First of all, not that they were. They simply, India was not on the radar screen. That's all, period. India is one of those countries in the back of their mind. Otherwise, not much in the radar screen at all. Some Taj Mahal and other thing will be known from India. So this is the type of a thing, and that continues. Unfortunately, many of these, major agencies, many of these things, they have not visited India. I used to say jokingly to our external affairs people, whenever somebody comes, first ask him how many states are there in India, how many languages, how many different type of religions. If he answers those questions, then only you allow him to write about India. Otherwise, you just ask him to stay in annex, as Iyer told, of IIC and study all these things. So, it's many of them are, for instance, small example I can tell. When I was in US, my colleagues, highly educated, double doctorate and global, they all thought actually Indira Gandhi is the daughter of Mahatma Gandhi. Many of them, I have to correct, no relationship at all, and other thing, they were not believing it. Of course, many of them thought Mahatma is his first name. That also I have to correct. It is not his first name, it is actually one of the titles given to him, another thing. It's a mistake is ours also. For instance, in New York Times or Washington Post, if they have to report about a Bush who has stolen a car in the local area, they will always write in the bracket, not related to the previous President Bush. They make it very, unambiguously, very clear in those days. We never did that. Whenever we write Indira Gandhi, I don't remember any newspaper, anybody telling not related to our Mahatma Gandhi. So, we have to also be partly blamed. Their knowledge is extremely poor of India. And of course, of again, Hindu, Muslim and all those things. It's a very long run out process. But now we are slowly emerging. I would say re-emerging, what you might correctly call. Now the interest is more travel, more number of people, business and other traveling to India, going around India and seeing. We have as much problem as any other country in the Western world in terms of traffic, in terms of pollution, in terms of all these things are there. But at least now they are opening their eyes. And so I will close this with an interesting thing. In the 70s, 80s, whenever I used to visit, they always used to look at my passport and then look at me as a sort of a useless fellow. Why he has come here and for how long you will be here, sir? And they will make it appear that But after 2000, Y2K and all our software company emergence, when I entered, that fellow asked, "Are you software person?" I asked him, "Why? Why are you asking this?" No. I just thought one more job may be out. so I couldn't control my laughter. One thing I will frankly tell: our software industry, whatever said and done, has completely changed the perception about India by the elite and educated and other classes abroad. And once I went to Taiwan for a meeting. I was coming back. I was sitting in their airport. One elderly lady came to me and told, "Sir, can you help me?" I was very puzzled because she was very well dressed and well mannered. I didn't think that she was a beggar, but she had a laptop with her. She wanted me to have a look at it. It's not working, some problem. I was very. I told her, "Why did you? You are from India, right?" I told yes. So she thought everyone from India is a king of this software business and other thing. It is like, one doctor told me, looking at his palm, somebody thought that he is a surgeon. So this is not the point I want to make is our hats off to our software guy, good or bad, whatever it is, they have put India on the global map in terms of these type of interactions and so same way I'm sure in the next 4 to 5 years, more growth, more interest by the companies in order to enter into this country, in order to have a large share of the market, and it will be more advantage India. I only hope it changes, and to change, we also have to change. We shouldn't give too much importance to what the New York Times or Wall Street Journal write, and many of those negative writing is done by the Indians only. Recently, Foreign Affairs carried a long article on the major dimensions of the crisis of India by Ramchandra Guha. So it is not something, so it is our own number of people are there from India who would like to write as per their requirement. That's very, very important. It's not something, if I write something pricing India, Washington Post is not going to be enthusiastic about it. But that will also change. That will pass. I am very sure. In the next 5 to 10 years, I may or may not be around. But the system will take care of it. And it will be genuine understanding of India by the Western countries. And in the process, we ourselves should also be very clear and price ourselves, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor RV. Apologies for the slight quality degradation.
Yeah, there was a problem in my side, I think, right?
No, it's on your side, I think, sir. We checked, Sachin and I were checking. It's coming from your side. That's okay, sir. We could hear you clearly, no problem. I just wanted to add to one observation of yours about a lady asking your help for fixing laptop. There's a stand-up comedian, Professor RV. His name is Gabriel Iglesias. He's popularly known as Fluffy, Fluffy. Fluffy.
Yeah.
And he has an outstanding joke about Indians. I mean, it's so funny, and he's a very, very funny character. Those of you who like stand-up comedy, do go to YouTube and look up Fluffy, Fluffy, and about India also. It's just very outrageous the way he comes up with his observations. Amazing. So let's move on to some questions, Professor RV, if you don't mind.
Sure.
First question. Thank you, Manjunath Reddy for becoming.
He became a YouTube man. Very nice. Thank you.
Nana vanillai. Naan avanillai unnai poloruvan. I see. So this is a. I thought it was pseudonym. Thank you so much. Magnet Ranga wants to know, much of Indian media too seems so anti-Modi ji that they take matters to almost anti-India level. How can self-regulation of media be strengthened? Anti-Modi ji is acceptable, anti-India is not.
These what you are observing, Magnat Ranga, is much more with the English media. By and large, the Hindi media is not so much anti-Modi or anti-India or anything. That is one. Of course, Tamil Nadu is different. TN media is because it is controlled totally by the ruling group. So I think it will slowly change. And they confuse, that's always the case in India actually. Indra is India, that's what the famous 𝗣𝗚𝗍𝗍𝗍 𝗤𝘳 told in one of the meetings. So the leader is identified with the country. But as we become, grow more, I'm sure this attitude will change.
Next question, please. Manoj Soma wants to know, is it true that much of Western media more centralized and some say there is some left liberal touch to news in West and churches influence it? Your opinion, sir?
Yes, your observation is correct.
Next one, please. Rohit Akshay wants to know, Hare Krishna, almost every school in Hyderabad / Pan India is influenced by an NGO who always have a left narrative to peddle. How do we tackle this situation? Can speakers like you come to help schools?
It's a very, long drawn out issue. Not only in Hyderabad, almost all the places in India, particularly many of the NGOs are left oriented, and many of them are FCRA funded also. That is something very, very important. Even a well-meaning, for instance, there was a report about this ADR, Association of Democratic Reform. They publish very good reports about these political parties and all these things. Recently, they went to Supreme Court for, changing the electoral regulation. Anyhow, the point I want to stress is they put out a report about how many of these contestant MLAs, MPs are all having criminal background. They put a number of criminal cases, 81, 73, like that. Now, very unfortunate in India, even if there is a police cordon, for instance, you are going in a procession, you want to, you slightly, overdo yourself and then break the cordon. Then the cops can file a case against you and then make you a criminal. It's a very unfortunate thing. And then that case will be, practically dead. Nowhere it will be taken up or anything, except in statistics. What I want to say is, even a minor what one can call infraction or something can put you into that hole. So this is something which many of the NGOs are highly influenced by left orientation, and then also funding is through international agencies and other things. So this is a very big issue actually. Whereas not many people are even aware of thousands of food centers are run by Ramakrishna Mission and this Hare Krishnas and Bharat Sevashram Sangh, and the RSS and its affiliate themselves have got something like 1,30,000 type of this organization. All of them are NGOs. They are not in the limelight. That's the only thing. They just carry on their regular activities in this fashion. Maybe time has come to highlight those activities are also. Okay.
Sir, we should not say too much about all these good works, sir. There is a lady in your state who complained that Akshay Patra does not serve onion or eggs in their free meals.
This is your Manika Gandhi.
No, not Manika Gandhi. Your state, sir. She's not in your state. It's okay. Let's not glorify the person's name. These are all people who want to somehow find fault. That's all there is. Don't let any good thing to thrive, right? Sundar Kidambi wants to know, Professor sir, does Western media still look at India as Pagan land or pagan land, they call it here, which must be civilized desperately? Is there any
the fundamentally many of the strong believers in the old style Christianity and other thing, I think India required to be reformed. I think I did mention last time, or I was in a church.
You did.
I think I mentioned this. There were some 10 people. I was the 11th fellow. The church can accommodate 1,000 people. You can first of all understand how much the decline in the church-going activity in the Western world. It was a Sunday to top it all. At the end of it, that bishop came to me and patted me on the back because he might have felt this is a new fellow coming. Where from? And then I told I am from India. Then he told, oh, you are all in darkness. And I told, yes, massive power cut and coal shortage. And this way our conversation went on. See, because one thing you have to, people don't recognize, it is the dharma of the religions like Christianity or Islam to change others, to convert others. It is their dharma. They genuinely believe that other people are not having adequate amount of enlightenment. It is up to them to provide some amount of enlightenment. It's not something propaganda or anything. It is one of the tenets of their what one can call religion or something. So that is why. And there is other type of groups which have anti-India bias because they are significantly influenced by the Islamic groups who peddle the thing that India is a very difficult country, and sometimes Christians also, some of the, what I mean to say is this fundamentalist Christians, they also spread the message. Coupled with this, the current woke groups, groups which are, you may call it as what better word is wokeism only, and they also want to look at India with a lot of this bias. It's a very complicated thing, and so it requires patience. And so one of the oldest living civilization that we have to recognize and remember. That's what I would say. Okay.
Next question, please. Shankar VK wants to know, Professor Sir, while we are fighting the woke narrative of New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, etc., why don't we see any of the Indian media giants doing anything substantial within US, UK, etc.?
See, Indian media is a very, very funny name actually, if you ask me, because most of them rely on the handouts by these international papers. Their coverage, except for this World is One, Beyond, very recently, trying to do some independent coverage, and of course our PGurus. Otherwise, the coverage is all handouts handed over by whatever Reuters gives, whatever Bloomberg gives, it's reproduced here. That's all. How many Indian newspapers have correspondents in global capital, you tell me? The Hindu used to have in those days, one in Washington, one in Peking, another thing. I don't know about now. Maybe they may continue to have. But otherwise, no major Indian paper has got their own agencies and their own bureaus in global capitals. One. Second is, they rely significantly on what is handed out by these various. And so sometimes it is very funny. What happens in Delhi, Reuters covers it, and that is carried by Hindustan Times. It's a stupid thing. Hindustan Times is in Delhi. It should be able to cover it in their own domain. So you cannot expect Indian media are giants only by our understanding, not in terms of their global outlook or anything.
Next one, please. Venkatrama Muthuswamy wants to know, why don't these Americans bring their university campuses in order first before poking nose into India? Do they know their priorities?
Their campuses have always been, in this type of and incidentally, I think Iyer will agree with me. It's not that 95% of their students are in turmoil or anything. It's a determined small group, but a very determined group, which is creating this what one can call conflicts, or particularly the Arab, segments, pro-Arab segment. And sometimes some interviews are conducted, they don't know even what for they are shouting or what for they are showing the flag. That is also there. So otherwise, it's from the Vietnam War time I am talking about, in the 70s. It's always so. Do they know that their priority is this? But except now, it's slightly more complicated because some of the donors are trying to pull out. They were traditionally not very much enthusiastic in getting involved in this, but now, because of the anti-Semitism and other things, some donors, big donors, I think Iyer will agree with me on this, are threatening to take out the funds from these, and that is really a very major crisis for some universities.
Next one, please.
Next.
Thank you, thought provocateur. Why bother about Washington Compost and New York slimes?
I agree with you. I agree.
Next one, please.
40 rupees also you have given. Thank you very much.
𝗤𝙧𝙤𝘀𝘍, thank you so much. Should there be a code of conduct for NGOs?
Yeah, there it is. There is a conduct code for NGOs, but many of them are not following it. And the government is also, see, there is some, last what I remember is 24 to 25,000 were getting the FCRE. Monitoring them is not a joke actually. Very small group of people in home ministry are with that. And it's a sort of self-regulation type of a thing was thought about. In India, unfortunately, self-regulation doesn't work because self comes before regulation. So that is the type of the point which we should remember. Okay.
It's like cash and money in cash.
Yeah.
Cash at hand or hand in cash. Cash in hand, hand in cash. Something like that.
Hand in cash. So,
well, wonderful session, Professor RV. I hope next time the internet Bhagwan will. We have to come up with a god for internet also, sir. It's so prevalent everywhere. We have to seek his blessings before we come online. Thank you so much, Professor RV. At least the audio part was very good. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
So, till we meet.